as the front-end developer, you have to look at the design and try to decide how much am I going to translate into like directly based on what they have, or how much am I going to transform a little bit in the translation to make it adapt better to the web. But we do need an infinite list view on the web. We need something that is competitive with a UI table view that they have on native. And React, the whole reason React got invented like 12 years ago or whatever was for an infinite list. Thank you, dude. That was my thing. I was like, here's a big problem. I guarantee 90% of the people in this crowd, even though you're all CSS professionals, don't have this property on your site, and it's making your site look bad.
Revision 672. We are 3 people, 2 from the team. 1 is Vanessa. Hello, Vanessa.
Hi.
My name is Schepp, and that means we have a guest, and that guest is Adam Argyle. Hello, Adam.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us from Seattle and also across not just the pond, but also all kinds of time zones. Very cool that we could make this happen. You have been guest with us already, but we looked up when that was, and that was 2020, so 5 years ago. So our guess is that a lot of our listeners, and maybe also listeners that just listen to this episode, won't know you. So would you maybe tell us who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. Oh, I can't believe that was like CSS 4 5 years ago. Now we're on CSS 5. There's been a whole bunch of stuff that's happened. Woo! My name's Adam, though, and I hail from the States. I'm on the West Coast, the best coast, the fresh coast. I'm just a kind of excited, easy going UI developer. I love sweating all the details. I like nerding out about border radius and nested border radius and all the weird little things that can happen along the way of making a desirable user experience. I just want to make UIs that people go, oh, that wasn't just functional. That was kind of delightful. Or there was a moment there where I didn't feel like I was making a business transaction. I was entertained by the cute little bird that flew by or something. And so I've just always spent my time acquiring skills and tools so that I can make nice user experiences. And sometimes that means getting into the back end, sometime in the front end. It doesn't matter. I'll do what it takes to make a good user experience. And that's led me to a lot of focus on CSS, because a lot of people don't focus on CSS and you need someone to. And so I always stepped in and was happy to learn the skills and learn the language to, again, just deliver a delightful user experience. And so it's a little bit about me. I was at Google for 7 years, but am not anymore.
Yeah. And I think you also picked the right topic, because I would say since you concentrated on CSS really went off and went through the roof with features and new developments and advancements. So CSS is the new JavaScript, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I even showed up, and that's kind of how I got that role on Chrome doing CSS. Was I was like, hey, you have like 6 people doing JavaScript DevRel things. Where's the CSS one? And they were like, you do it. And I was like, nope, I don't have any skills doing this, whatever. And anyway, I got talked into it, and I already loved the language. So at that point, it's just learning how to DevRel. But yes, I didn't do all the work. That's definitely not the case. But I do feel like I lit a fire under it at Chrome specifically and said, there's more work to do here, and there's a lot of value that we can get out of this for users and developers. And that pitch really resonated with them for a long time. And it's happy to see that grow. Yeah.
Yeah, and also so I have the impression that the whole focus also of the DevRel team moved a lot more towards CSS. So yeah, and you were DevRel, which means basically you were in touch with us developers, like feeding back like the wishes and like all the real world problems that we have to the team, and the other way around, you also took the new stuff and explained it. So
I did, and that was really fun. I have years and years of developer interview experience just in my mind, from designers to developers to product managers to project managers to anyone kind of working to build something on the web. I did. I kept friction logs. I kept notes like, okay, so I focused on scroll for 5 years. And that's because 5 years ago, I noticed very much so that scroll was difficult, or that scroll wasn't competing well with native apps, for example. Native apps they had multi-threading, and they had just over scroll effects and scroll driven animations and all this stuff that we didn't have. And I categorized it all. I made a big old list and then went down to that list, and they were like, well, we can't ship all those features. And I was like, well, here's the top 5 most meaningful ones. And that's what spawned things like scroll into view with like additional options, the scroll markers and scroll buttons, as well as scroll start. It's just the ability to like start the scroll. Anyway, it's just like all of these were born out of problems that users had. And you're right, I would walk those through, and then I'd be the first developer to try the feature in Chrome and make sure it was validating and solving the problems that we set out to fix, and eventually get on stage and show everybody the cool stuff that's in the web platform they asked for because they allowed us to interview. So a lot of kudos goes out to people just allowing me to interview them. And yeah, I missed that about it. It was really cool staying in touch with so many developers all the time. It's very, very meaningful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that once you gave this snap talk at CSS Day, just about scrolling, and it was like you didn't just show features, but I wouldn't say misused. You had like a lot of tricks that you showed, which were, in retrospect, they were like, okay, it makes total sense, but you have to think of this. And like these things where you have this, I don't know, I remember you had these pseudo elements at the start and end of scroll areas, which were like extra space, but they wouldn't snap. So that made like a bit elastic. If you could scroll further than like the end, and that was, or you also had this pull to refresh thing that you showed.
Yeah.
You blew my mind.
Oh, you were in that talk too, because you blew my mind with your keyframe hacky trick to make carousels auto progress, I think was the deal, right? And it could pause with CSS, and is just the whole thing with CSS with buttons.
Yeah,
that was a very wild demo too. But yeah, over scroll effects, I still use that one all the time, making that elastic effect. It was in my talk at CSS Day, and I was like, hey, it doesn't all have to be business, because like that's a good business use case, right? Like, ooh, add a nice little moment of elastic delight to a scroller. Ooh, isn't that so fancy? And so in the talk at CSS Day, I was like, hey, those are cool, they're fancy, they're great, but also you can make it silly. And I showed one where my face, as you scroll, that over scroll effect, I scroll driven animation my face into the thing, and it's like me doing this like really dorky face saying something like yeah, and so you get to the end of the scroller, and as you over scroll it, it's like yeah, and then you go back to the beginning. Anyway, I should have added a sound bite into it. It would have been really funny, but it's not all business, some of this stuff. But you're right, scroll is littered with fun little quirks that you can call them hacks or call them features. It's up to you, but knowing that they're there,
it's creativity.
It's
good. They were not hacks. It was just assembling things that were there in a new way and that nobody thought of before.
Yeah, but this is also what makes CSS so beautiful. And listening to you now, it reminds me of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, not Breath of the Wild, but Tears of the Kingdom, where they gave you the possibility to build stuff.
Oh yeah,
with hundreds of items, and the community just started. And I don't believe that Nintendo could foresee that the community will come up with. And I think it was on day 3 where this very cheap plane was already created, which was extremely powerful, but so simple. And then people just started to create so many very interesting and creative things. I do enjoy this revision now. My only problem in my day-to-day life is that I hear about these CSS tricks, not hacks, but tricks. But Adam, you also provided a list of CSS attributes that we could go through today. but I think I have used none of those in my real life.
What about scroll
ma-
snap? Any scroll snap in your regular day?
Scroll snap, yes, but only with a library. I think I replaced a library with that, but this was
Ooh,
really
nice.
everything. So I did not use the rest yet, and that always makes me a bit sad. But I'm always very happy if people talk about them.
Awesome. And yeah, you touch on one of my favorite things about CSS too. You ask 10 different CSS developers how to accomplish something, you get 10 different results.
Yes.
They can each be unique and fun. And I think about it like it's the same thing why I like making design tools, or I like working on tools that enable expression, because that's what we're talking about. The human shows up to all these kind of otherwise useless parts, and then we put them together and we express something unique and fun. And in Zelda, we were making, hover cars, or I made a hover motorcycle, and all sorts of.
This is what how they.
Yeah, the hover bike was really cool. I was like, yeah, hover bike. I tried to make a one wheel. It didn't work out very good because it didn't balance very good. But I think there's the balancing thing you can stick on there to stay balanced. Anyway, yes, I love expressing and just like being creative and taking things that maybe they didn't see would work, which is kind of like music too. Music, you get these really blunt building blocks. Notes. Oh, here's notes in a scale. Here's a chord. And then you're like, what am I supposed to do with those? And you're like, well, look at this person over here. They're making them sing. And you're like, whoa, expression, human expression is so, so cool. And yeah, CSS sits right in there with some of the highest, most impressive, expressive capabilities that we have on our little digital screens. And yeah, I love it.
What I also want to say, as I meant, that I don't use it in my work life. I don't want to say that these are only creative, only artsy CSS attributes that you don't need in your business life. But my personal problem is also to come across the new features that CSS might have and to know where can I use it, how can I test it. So I'm just very happy that we now have the chance to talk about them and also talk about maybe real life business cases where we might need to implement CSS that behaves like this then. Maybe it's also a bit problematic if you usually in businesses have a UX or UI design prepared. And then also from a developer perspective, come in and say, hey, I have additional ideas how we can make it behave a bit more smooth. Maybe we change the UI design a bit so we can also support a bit of snapping or any of these other functionalities that we have now.
Yeah, you're right. There is definitely a tension and a collaborative moment to happen between design and development. And yeah, designers often don't know what's available on the web because they're limited by their tools. Figma is not a web design tool. It's a tool to make native app designs or any kind of design. So it's not enabling designers to reach into the coolest parts of the web platform. And yeah, I think you nail something very specific, which is great, that we need business use cases for these things. They can't just be cool. Like here in our list, we have at function and at mixin. Those don't really have business use case other than, developer ergonomics and making them faster and delivering less. I mean, you could like argue that that's a business use case, but it's not as easy as something like scroll state, which I think has great business use case. Color contrast has great business use case. These things can kind of be added or even scroll buttons. That's one of my favorite ones. That's an Overflow 5. You don't have to write JavaScript or anything. You can add buttons onto the scroll area with just CSS. And those can bring a lot of value to the scenario, but designers aren't going to ask you for CSS scroll buttons. So you're right. As the front-end developer, you have to look at the design and try to decide how much am I going to translate into like directly based on what they have, or how much am I going to transform a little bit in the translation to make it adapt better to the web. And yeah, these are some of the hard parts of front-end development is you never get the complete picture from anyone. You always have to kind of go in there and finish it, right? And that's when I always go add animations. I'm like, I'm going to transition this little state change right here. They didn't ask for it, but it's only one more line of code. But yeah, those are tough things to decide. Is there business value in this thing? And I don't know. It's kind of like these What's New in CSS podcasts or just episodes can be really good for you to hear. Like maybe one day I'll get asked to do something and then I heard about that feature and now I know that it's there for me. And so I think about these things as at first when you're learning about these things, just put them in your tool belt. You don't have to use it yet, but just know it exists, and that'll help you for when the time comes.
Yeah. And it's also cool if you do some kind of demos and brown bag sessions for your colleagues so that they also learn about it. And then maybe they deliver a design that uses it. So that's really cool. And the business values could also, one business value could be you have to ship less JavaScript. So that's also cool. So even if on the surface everything is the same as before, but you ship less JavaScript, that's already or at least for me, that's an improvement. And it's also more robust because CSS gets evaluated constantly. So you don't have to, like, for example, if you have I remember back in the days when you did JavaScript slider and you had maybe like on desktop, there were 2 elements sliding at once. And then on mobile, you had just one because the viewport was small. Then you had to like destroy and reinstantiate the thing when like the screen went from, I don't know if you rotated the phone from like a portrait to landscape or these things, or at least if I wanted to do it correctly. So maybe some people didn't, and that was not a nice developer experience to wield these scripts.
Yep, that was a lot of Overflow 5. So scroll markers and scroll buttons and scroll start, or now it's called scroll initial target. These things are all so that JavaScript can get out of the way, so that you can deliver a scrolling experience that resizes to the viewport, that has buttons that move it back and forth, and have little dots, all from CSS, and they're just nice to haves. And now if your user's browsing without JavaScript enabled, they also get a carousel through the 50 images or whatever it is that you're kind of carouseling them through. And it's responsive. They turn their phone, no JavaScript has to execute, just regular page layout. And totally hit the nail on the head with that one. Yep.
So maybe we should start diving in. So I think it's not like super grouped, the list that we have. Like I think we have like some scroll things here, some scroll things there.
But the first one is already like absolutely brilliant. The contrast color.
Well, or in this case, it's color contrast, the color contrast function. Yes. But there's also contrast -color function. So maybe we could start with the why is there like these two even? Like,
oh, it got renamed. So I think you're remembering the old one, contrast -color.
Okay, I thought it's still like alive and just kind of paused for now.
Well, the whole function was supposed to be paused, contrast color, for 2 reasons. The biggest reason being that the WCAG contrast algorithm was made in the 90s and is not as good as we'd like it to be. Or at least the CSS working group was like, hey, there's too many times where the WCAG guideline or the WCAG function gives you a color that's actually less readable than another color. It's because it's a math operation, and it was a math operation made in the 90s to perform very quickly because our computers were slower. And so there's been work to be done to make new ones, a new contrast algorithm that would be more accurate for human eyes as opposed to just luminance in math. And they're pretty much all theories or none are official parts of the WCAG 3.0. So there was one about to be, it was called APCA. It was the Advanced Perceptual Contrast Algorithm that was supposed to overtake the WCAG one, but that's a whole conversation on its own about why that didn't go through. But anyway, so contrast color now does use the WCAG 2.0 algorithm. Kind of regrettably, the people in the working group didn't want to support that. And so the compromise that got made was the contrast color or the color contrast function now exclusively in terms of its version 1 that's been shipped in 2 browsers now is just to return black text or white text given a color that you pass in. And the bummer is it'll still return you the wrong text color in certain situations. But it's only those situations when it's like right on the edge, like, oh, if you go one more hue nudge on this color, it becomes white text. And if you nudge it, the hue, the other direction becomes black text. And sometimes it'll choose black text incorrectly or something like that. But that's the current function we have. But the original function was not just to return black or white text. It was going to return you a color from your design system. You could pass it 10 colors, for example. Like, here's all my blues. Here's the background that this text is on. Pick the best light blue to fit on this background, given the user's contrast preferences. And that just ended up being way too complex. And so for now, we have the very simple one that just returns white or black text based on a color using the WCAG 2.0 algorithm. But one day, we might have a very powerful one that can be very dynamic and take your contrast settings, so that, like, maybe you have low contrast preference in your users or high contrast preferences in your user settings. This function could take those into account automatically and calculate a meaningful text color for users just in time, kind of, and pull something from your design system, because usually a designer doesn't make white or black text these days, at least. Usually it's a very, very dark blue, or it's a really, really light blue if your theme is blue. So it's a little useless to some designers. Anyway, that's me. Here's a really long explanation of some color contrast.
Yeah. Well,
but I don't think that it is useless at all. I remember that I had a real use case years ago. And it was not so everybody who is right now listening thinking of, oh, why do I need a function for that is calculating a color? Because I could also preset colors, like, here are my 10 background colors, and for this you use white, and for those you use black text. But we had a feature where users could set their background color. And yes, we did start with a fixed set of colors for them to choose, so we can have control about their text color then. But then 1 week the feature was out and users were asking, we want this colors, we need that.
It needs to match my brand color, my brand, not your orange,
exactly, my brand color, my brand color. And I'm like, I cannot go to the code base in the front end and write your company name inside and say, if this company, then those colors, please. And we don't have time in the backend to implement it like this. And so here's a color picker. Just choose whatever background you would like to have. And then here's a color picker for the text color, or maybe just white and black. But so you think it might be a simple task to ask for just use a contrast color, please. But no, not a simple task. So then we got bug reports. Hey, I cannot read the text on your website. I'm like, yes, because you chose this background color. But this is user experience. And of course, in the moment when I get this bug report, I'm like, this is not a technical error. But still, it is a user experience. And it would have been great if I could have used the function like this at this point. Also understanding, I think there are background colors where you might never have a good contrast, neither with
that is correct.
Like
also,
mid
yes.
of gray, probably.
Yep, all those scenarios are there. And so that I'd used to talk to Facebook about that, because they have Facebook groups or whatever, and groups can set any color that they want. And they have a wild backend pipeline of JavaScript functions that convert the hex color into OKLCH or an LCH equivalent. And they try to dynamically generate a palette for that Facebook group based off the color. And they're managing all of this infrastructure just to deliver good, accessible color palettes to a dynamic user-based color picker of their website. So yeah, it's a tough problem. And I agree, color contrast comes in really handy there, and it would have automated a lot of it. But yeah, it just depends on how robust you want to control all the colors. If black and white are fine for you, then you're good to go. I also shared in our notes here my proposal for contrast color, because I was one of the original people that proposed this. And this was proposed in CSS Color, the specs, because the users are having such a hard, developers and designers have a hard time picking contrasting colors. It's also, you look at the WCAG reviews of all the websites, and they're like, contrast, the color is the number one issue across the board. So we're like, what if we just give people a function? Boom, that's easy. And so then I shared my proposal there, which allows you to pass a color and then provide some other options. You could pick which contrast algorithm you want to use. So you could pick APCA, or you could pick another one that, there's been 4 or 5 of them created over the past 40, 50 years. And then you could also specify black or white by using a keyword and just saying, pick the maximum contrasting value. And then you could also let it pick a color for you. So like, let's say you were just like, hey, pick a really light pink on top of this red. I don't want it to be white. And it would find the nearest light pink within the same hue of your red button that passes the color contrast requirements. And my function also looked at user preferences. So it looked at the prefers reduced contrast value and would automatically adjust the returned result based on the user's preference. So that was my proposal, and very little or none of it made it into the current shape of the one. But I still think it's the one that, if, from all the designers that I talked to, this would be the most useful, but it's a little hard to do also.
Yeah, it's one of these things where you are dependent on like an external group, and if they don't move, then you can't move, and these kind of things. So yeah, what can you do? But I think the current solution with just returning white and black. So the rationale behind that is that even if it's like, yes, it's limited, but on the other hand, it's like people don't expect things to really break a lot when color contrast then one day gets upgraded to do all the things that we just discussed that we wish it could, right? So the probability that a white now is like off a lot by a big margin of the color that future color contrast version would return is like not high. So that's the idea, I think.
Yep. And speaking of preferring reduced contrast, you see the new iOS designs with the liquid glass.
Mm-hmm.
You got prefers reduced transparency. Also, that's been in your browser for a while. And some users prefer no transparency. And so you got to use that media query. That media query became really valuable now, as I think a lot of people are going to be like, I can't see through the glass. I would like to not have glass and just be an element I can read, So anyway, we could do that on our websites too. And I think that's a fun media query that people don't think about very often.
And prefer reduced contrast. That's also a new one, right? Because
I think it's prefers contrast, and then the value. I typed it wrong. The value is more or less is your options.
Okay.
This is actually also my trick. If I explain anybody to test also like the Windows high contrast mode or something like this. So if you don't have a Windows machine or you don't have a browser stack, that I think you can go to your DevTools and choose the tab rendering, and there's a prefers contrast less inside, and I think it also simulates a bit. I'm not sure if it's exactly like this, but it does somehow simulate maybe like a high contrast mode, and then everybody can test it. At least everybody was very happy as I told them about the trick, so I think it's a good trick.
It's a great trick. I did on my CSS Day talk for all the scrollers that I made. They were light, dark, and had forced colors. So yeah, you're talking about there's two things you can change in rendering to emulate. There's the contrast preference, more or less. So someone wants high contrast or low, but then there's also forced colors, which is like, it's like high contrast, but super high contrast, because it doesn't care what your page colors are anymore. And forced colors, when that's active, your borders become really important because you can't rely on your card background color or box shadow to even appear anymore. And so in forced colors,
big box shadow on top.
Yeah, you get a bunch of. Yeah, so I like forced colors too. I think it looks really cool. And yeah, you can emulate that in DevTools. Yeah.
Yes, and you don't have to be a developer. You don't have to have a browser stack or so account, but hey, it's in your DevTools.
I don't think a lot of people know either. There's light forced colors mode active and dark forced colors mode active. So beware, everyone. There's two. But I mean, really, if you handle one, you're going to handle both. But it's nice to see your site in light forced active and dark forced active.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway is really what you said, like hacking things, like doing fake borders with box shadows. These things, like they fall back on you then.
Yep, they can come back to get you. I really like transparent borders. That's like one of my favorite things now. It's like if I've got a surface, or if I'm even considering the element like it has its own surface, which means a text color and a background, put a border on it, and a transparent border. That way, when anything becomes forced colors active, you're in the clear. And all you did was put a 1 pixel transparent border on something, and now you're handling that accessibility use case really well. And you can still do all your box shadows and your gradient backgrounds on the cards and all the sort of different surface experiences. But if you got that transparent border, you're checking a good accessibility box.
That's a neat trick. Taking notes.
So you mean you don't even have to write in CSS if mode is on, then set a border instead? But you
That's
say
correct.
just by default you add a border that is transparent. Maybe even something with a margin of a negative pixel to get your size and your area size back? Or
Sure.
do you do that, or do you say no, it does not matter?
I don't do it because you got a box sizing border box. And so that transparent border, you can have it overlay the background color instead of create space. Well, that would be transparent. It would be box sizing content box. So if you want, you can sort of dance with those. But I haven't found that the 1 pixel border is actually as disruptive as it seems. But it's a good question. Yeah, it could throw off alignment. It could throw off sizing. There's all sorts of things. But yeah.
Then you also listed prefers reduced data, which is like a rather old, in quotes, old media query. I think it's around for maybe 10 years already, but I think the uptake on the other browsers is not there, right?
Yeah, it's about 6 years old. It was proposed by Chen Hui, because they were looking at, hey, the browser has saved data modes. Hey, the operating system has like a saved data thing where it's trying, hey, well, can a website from CSS tap in it? It looks like JavaScript. Hey, JavaScript has access to the users in a reduced data state. How do we get that into CSS? And so it hit the spec very, very quickly. Everyone was like, oh yeah, totally. That's a great media query. But at the same time, there was a lot of privacy concerns around these media queries because they expose a user's setting. And when you expose a user's setting, like reduced data, attackers can use this as a vector, and they can be like, oh, reduced data, you must be poor. You must be coming from somewhere with no money. And so then they can use that or whatever to try to attack or section you into some type of user and then sell your data. So this particular media query, which I also helped work on and tried to unblock it because I made so many demos of it. I also put the Chrome for it in Chromium. So if you open Canary and turn on web experiments and try the prefers reduced data thing, that's my code running in Chromium, which is kind of cool. But this comes up in talks. This was in like 3 CSS Day talks. Hey, make sure to remember prefers reduced data. I'm sitting in my chair going, this thing's like 6 years old. No one's using it. It's not shipped in any browser, yet it's constantly on screen. People want to be considerate of user data, but there's no browser that shipped it, and it's blocked in the CSS working group because it's a new attack vector, so it might not ever ship, but JavaScript can do it. Like all of my images on the server know if the user's in a save data mode, and I can ship a different image because that header travels with that user when they make requests. So I'm like, the attack vector is already there. CSS is not exposing anything new. And it's a really difficult battle, but I think that's a meaningful media query that we just kind of need to ask for more or something. I don't know. I'm not sure how to unblock it at this point, but I put it there because, yeah, it means something to me, and I'd like to see it go somewhere.
I thought it had already shipped in Chrome, so that was just my remembering, but that was apparently wrong. So I thought because you already have like these client hint headers and also the JavaScript thing, that it was also in CSS already, but apparently it wasn't.
It got blocked. Yep.
That would also be like nice to use as a feature query, for example, in a responsive image thing, maybe, or video also.
Yeah, I have a demo of like a site kind of like Netflix. And if you're in reduced data, you don't get any thumbnail images. You just get titles. And it's kind of better. It's almost like the images are really showy and they make for like, it feels like a good browsing experience. But in the end, they're kind of noise. Like the cover of the movie isn't actually that important. It's more about like, what's the genre? When did it come out? Who are the actors? And so it's kind of interesting. You can ship a reduced data experience it saves 90% of the page load because, well, most of the page is images. If you don't ship any of the images and CSS is hiding them because the user's in this state and you have lazy loaded, the lazy attribute on all the images, they never download at all. And so the user gets this like super fast loading web page and they can start interacting with it right away, even though they're on low data. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of examples that show this can be really cool, but I don't know. Maybe we just got to do it from JavaScript. Just let JavaScript do it. It's okay.
No, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. So I once had a real use case. So I traveled to the US and I had a phone that was 4G enabled. That's a few years already back. And the problem was that the frequencies in Europe are not the same ones that I use in the US. So my phone only supported the European 4G. So it tried to fall back to 3G, but in Florida, they already turned 3G off because nobody used it anymore. So it then fell back to 2G. And It was super slow. And that was a situation where I would have wished for more websites offering data saving modes.
Yeah.
So
just
it was
like
unusable.
accessibility where, accessibility doesn't matter until your arms are broken and you have to use a website with like your nose or something, or just like a different input device. And you're like, hey, this site should be built easier for me to hit my keyboard tab key. And you're like, yeah, it should. And it also shouldn't take you breaking your arms, dork, to realize that there's people out there that might want to use a site with not a mouse, Sorry, you're not a dork. Schepp was just making that clear. But yeah, you felt the pain. Yeah.
Not far from it. So after this experience, I worked at a news publisher, and one of my tasks was also to integrate ads, of course. But what I did was I checked if there was the connection type info on the if there was if it was a Chrome device and that tells me the connection type and it was too slow, then I would just bail out loading the ads. So that was one takeaway that I implemented in code later on.
Nice.
Yeah.
So these little tools letting us as developers express a meaningful user experience. That's kind of what we're going for. Very cool.
Yeah, because otherwise the whole page, like the ads as well as the content, would both be unusable. So then throw out one of the two and be able to use the other one. That was the idea.
Well, there's a lot more in this list. How about I fast share a couple of them?
Yeah. So control value is the next. I have never heard of that one.
Yeah. So, talking about what's new in CSS, some of the stuff down below isn't super new, but this one is really new. And this is, if you ever wanted the value of an input in CSS so that you, like a slider, hey, I want to know what the current slider value is so I can fill the goo track up to look like it's that full. And so we have to use JavaScript. We say JavaScript on input, set a custom property that says the value is in. Anyway, so this would just do the whole thing from CSS. You get control value. So as the selector inside of there, you can ask for the value of the input that you have selected and use that input in a calc or whatever. And I think that is really cool.
Yeah, super useful.
Super useful. Then there's transition behavior here, which is a weird sounding one, but comes in really handy when so a discrete property in CSS, if you animate from like display block to display none, for example, that's a discrete property. There's no in-betweens, none and block. I mean, there's opacity, but that's different. So anyway, the browser immediately flips these things if you put them in a CSS transition or in keyframes. As soon as it sees that it's headed towards display none, or as soon as it sees it's currently none and about to be blocked, it does it right away. And transition behavior allows you to delay this and integrate that moment of flipping into something that matches more with your other transitions. So you could transition opacity out and then flick to display none, for example. And so transition behavior is like a weird word, and the value is called allow discrete, and you have to say which property, if you want, you can say which property to be transition behavior on. But Anyway, it ends up being a pretty cool feature that allows you to control these discrete moments that are great for displaying a dialogue, for example, or the custom select element that pops up with its little popover. Those things you need to, if you want to animate those, you need to time the display none and display block that the browser is flipping on those for you. You need to time those with your transitions. And so transition behavior allows you to sneak that timing right in line with your other animations. And it adds for a nice, smooth user experience.
Yeah, very cool. A little bit like visibility, hidden and visible. I think that was so far the only thing that would only be flipped at the, like, visibility hidden would only be flipped at the very end, and the other way around.
Really?
I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that was the only thing that worked like that. So yeah, super cool.
Super cool. And that transition behavior comes in handy with animating to summary details, the dialogue elements, popovers, and select elements. So yeah, kind of a cool one to know. And then there's calc size and interpolate size. If you've ever wanted to animate height, this is how you do it now. You set interpolate size on the element and you say allow keywords. And this tells the element that things like min height or auto, these keywords can be used in an animation to go from 0 to something intrinsic inside of that calc size function. So then calc size can say, calc size is like calc, except the size portion of the function specifically calls out to the browser to measure and use the measured size. And there's keywords that you can put inside of calc size also that allow you to derive the perfect height animation value that you want to go to. And so then you can go from height 0 to height something. And again, this comes into play with like a summary details accordion. When it opens, it needs to transition to an intrinsic height to show all the paragraphs or the contents inside of there. And you can now animate that with a combination of calc size and interpolate size, which is pretty cool.
Yes, this is an example I think in my bubble everybody has waited for. And I'm happy that the calc size function is part of the this year's State of CSS survey. So people might get aware that there is this new cool thing.
Mm-hmm. I share a little link here too to I call it a nice accordion. It kind of takes all these little modern features and tries to layer them on so that you get a summary details that looks modern. It doesn't look like it was from the 90s. Just because I see so many bad summary details elements. And I'm like, let's make a cute one. It's got cool little micro interactions in there. So check that out in the show notes, y'all.
Yes. There's also probably all the new pseudo element inside, what is it, details content thing?
Details content, yeah. So colon details content, accessing the slot that your content is inserted into. Yeah.
Yep. Really nice. And also, I guess, progressive or graceful degrading on non-supporting browsers, right?
Yeah, if they can't select it, they can't select it. They're going to get just an accordion that opens and closes like regular. Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, like that just flips open and close and is not animated. And yeah, how like the way we had it for years if we didn't use JavaScript.
Right, same as it's always been, or it's better. Yep.
At least lighter. So the next one is scroll state. So state, there's...
Yes. This one I find has a lot of business value for upgrades. So at CSS Day, I talked about building the Nintendo Switch home screen. And scroll state is what allowed me to know which element was snapped and put the little highlighting, flashing blue box around it and to show the title of the game you have selected. I could use scroll state because scroll state exposes which element is snapped just from CSS. And it does it in the same way that container queries works. So on your scroll container, you say a container type is scroll state. And then you have a child that is a snapped element inside that scroller. And children of that snapped element can ask the snapped element, just like a container query. I don't want to know your width, snapped element, but I want to know if you're snapped or not. And you can use that just in CSS to show and hide a title of the selected item or animate in a focused selected state and all sorts of things. And scroll state has two other features on top of snapped. It also has overflowing, or is it called overflow? I think it's overflowing. And so you literally know if the scrollable area is actually scrolling right now. So like this was impossible to know before. Like sometimes you have a box and you put one paragraph in it, there's no scroll bar. You put 5 paragraphs in it, there's a scroll bar. How do you know from CSS if there's a scroll bar or not? You didn't know. And now with scroll state queries, you can know. You can ask the container, can you scroll? Which direction can you scroll? And it will say, I have scrollable runway down. And then if you reach the bottom, that is no longer true, but it does have scrollable up. And so you can show and hide little buttons that help people scroll. You can show and hide the scroll to top button really easy because you're like, hey, can they scroll upwards at all? If the answer is no, don't show the button. But as soon as you scroll down and as soon as you can scroll up at all, show that little helpful button to scroll to the top. So you're like giving CSS all sorts of cool little features. Oh, and then there's scrollable, snapped, and stuck. So you now know if something is stuck in a scroller from CSS by using a container query.
For position sticky, for example, right?
Yeah. Yep. So if you have a position sticky child in that scroller that just became the sticky header, the classic example is put a shadow on it as soon as it sticks. Like, okay, now you can do that with CSS. And that used to be a little annoying chunk of JavaScript you had to deploy.
Yeah. Very, very useful.
But it's not like stuck like a bug stuck, because maybe it's a German thing for me. When I hear the word stuck, it's like, oh, I'm stuck. I cannot move anymore. But it's position sticky, or is there another possibility that anything can be stuck?
I think it's just position sticky.
Okay.
But yeah, sticky's funny too. Even in the States, we're like, ooh, a sticky situation. I'm stuck. Yeah. It's like we know as the CSS developer, we're like, oh no, that's a good thing to be stuck if you're a sticky element. Like, it's okay. We wanted that. Pretty funny. Any more questions on scroll state? That one's pretty sweet. I wrote an article too for Chrome on that one. I should pull that up. Scroll state.
Yeah, maybe one question, and that is, what is do you know the view of the other browser vendors on that thing? Because
on scroll state queries?
Yeah. Are they like positive, or are they just, do they have no opinion? So,
they definitely are positive and helped it all happen. So a lot of this is like a common question about some of the scroll stuff, like scroll buttons and scroll markers. People are like, that seems like Chrome shipped it really fast. And did other browsers even know this was happening? And the answer is totally. Like these things, like scroll state queries, took multiple years. Tons of conversations. There's, these get, before they can even become a draft, you have to pitch it to the working group, and the working group has to accept it as a group. So all of these things went through group approval, and all of the refactors. It wasn't originally called scroll state, and they're called scroll state because we're anticipating other type of container queries. They're like a style query. It's kind of a style state query. You might get input state queries at some point. So they're kind of prepping and going through revisions to make sure that the future is covered on how this can extend more and more. But as far as I know, other browsers would love to implement this as soon as they can. But same thing with like style queries. Although I think Firefox doesn't like style queries. That's one where I've heard Firefox say, we don't want to implement that. Even though there's a whole bunch of developers out there, like Tailwind, the creator of Tailwind, wants style queries really bad. But Firefox is the last holdout. I don't know what their deal is there. But yeah, scroll state is all good. Same with scroll buttons and scroll markers. These things went through years of revisions, and they'll still go through changes, and it'll be better every time it gets talked about.
Yeah, maybe we can follow up with scroll markers and buttons right away.
Yeah, awesome. I'm trying to see if I have a link to any of the working group discussions on scroll state. Here's the explainer. Anyway, you can go find past conversations and see the interest of the other browsers. But as far as I know, these ones aren't contentious. Like people want to know if something's stuck or snapped. And this is a way to do it using the container query methodology.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of these states that people would love to know about. Like, for example, if you have these, what is it, text clamp? What is it? No, it's line clamp.
Yeah.
And for example, if you want to know if text is clamped or not, because if it's short enough to not get clamped, then everything is fine, but if it's being clamped, I would like to maybe put in an expand text button, for example, or like a dot thing. So for these use cases, such a state query would be helpful. Also, sometimes text will be clamped on mobile, but not on desktop. Also, these kind of things. So, yeah.
Yep, you need that dynamic ability. It's like it's a simple question from us as developers, like, "Hey, is it snapped?" And you don't even have to care if the scroller is even a snapping container at that time. But when it is, because maybe it's now on a mobile layout, which has gone into a constricted view, which caused it to go into a horizontal scroller, now you do have snap items, and you do want to know which one is snapped. And yeah, that was a lot of JavaScript. You had to dance around and manage state. That now the browser does it for you. It's pretty sweet.
Speaking of snapping, there's 2 new DOM events related to snapping, right?
Yeah. And these took a lot of years to get in there also, but they were really important. So, you listen to developers building things with scroll, and they want to know when something snaps. And then sometimes they want to know that it's maybe going to snap there, but hasn't snapped yet. And so that's what these 2 events help you isolate. Is snap change means that the scroller has rested on a new snap element, and it actually changed. So let's say you scroll with your finger, but then you scroll it back and you let go. Snap didn't change, so the event wouldn't fire. Scrolling did occur, and scrolling ended, but snap didn't change. And then snap changing is if you pan with your finger and enough that the next item would snap if you let go, the snap changing event fires to tell you eagerly and as soon as possible that there's a new snap element that's going to be snapped if the user lets go of their gesture. And so you can highlight the dot underneath it, for example. But then if they pan back the other way, then it could snap changing says, oh, I'm going to snap to this one. And then you can change the bottom dot. So you can kind of provide this feedback to the user while they're scrolling. And then when they let go, you can confirm the gesture. And these 2 events integrate really well with Snap to help you create an even better scroll snap experience.
And you briefly mentioned scroll end as an event, which is also a new event, I would say.
Yeah.
So you get notified if a scroll that happened is finished.
Is finished. And that one is extra tricky too. So that one I also helped spec. And I was really happy to see that one get really quickly adopted, because I always thought it was crazy that there was no scroll end event. Why isn't there one? And so all the JavaScript we had to write was, hey, infinitely do a set timeout. But if the set timeout goes longer than 100 milliseconds and there's still no scroll has changed, then they probably stop scrolling. And that was like as good as we had. But that didn't work if the user was panning with their thumb and they scrolled a little bit and then just stood still for 100 milliseconds. Scroll end would fire and steal the scroll from the user who wasn't done with the gesture. And it turns out, even in JavaScript, it's really hard to know if the user has a finger on the screen or not during a scroll gesture. So this was like really difficult stuff for even JavaScript to solve. And so we got that into the platform that literally waits for all of the gestures to end. And when the scroll maybe smoothly goes to a new place, as soon as it rests and as soon as it's done, the frame scroll has ended. So instead of you being delayed 100 milliseconds and maybe getting the scroll end event, you literally get the scroll end event at the exact perfect time, which is really important. So yeah, there's scroll end also. And there's this next one here, which is scroll into view. And you can pass the container, which is a weird way of saying you can scroll into view and not have it bubble up to all the other containers. This has been
I think that was something that I wished for, that I didn't notice that it's in the web platform.
Yeah, I bet you did wish for that one. It's super annoying. It's like and they did it for accessibility reasons, but I don't really think they thought it through as good as they could have. But yeah, so eventually, and it's spec'd, and I think it's prototyped in Chromium right now, that you can scroll an item into view and specify the container that you want it to be trapped within. And that way we can finally, like, I don't use scroll into view ever because of the way that it makes the page scroll. Also, It's like it's a very leaky, it has a lot of side effects.
Yeah, I think the problem is that scroll into view works itself from the topmost to the deepest, like the way down into the DOM, and it tries to scroll like the like as many parents as possible before then
Yeah.
starting to scroll the thing that you really wanted to scroll.
Yeah.
And that sucks. And this, like the option that you mentioned, that will probably reverse that or something like that.
It'll probably just say where it starts. So it sounds like if it works top to bottom, this would be like, hey, start at the container and maybe only affect this container. Maybe it won't even crawl into child scrollers. It'll just be isolated to the one scroll view that you pass in.
Yep. Cool. I also recently learned that, so I was always wondering, why does, I think, Firefox support scroll into view if needed, and why do the other browsers not implement it? So what's the problem
Chrome
with
has
that?
it, right?
Yeah, they do have it, and they just implemented it as an option for scroll into view. So didn't know about that. And I learned.
If needed, that one's funny too because it has the same issue with the container where it continues scrolling all the containers. So I was like, oh, it sounds neat. Scroll it into view only if you need to, which also kind of feels like how the original one should have just always operated. But you can't change history, so you got to just layer in new functions and new parameters to sort of handle these more modern cases.
That's just the way it is. Yep.
That's just the way it is. Yep. It's okay. I mean, we like it too. I mean, it's kind of nice that it doesn't break old stuff, right? It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's also like it's sometimes it sucks, but I think it's also the biggest plus side for the web platform. So it's just amazing that you can build things and they will work forever.
Yeah, I love it.
And you don't need to upgrade or touch them anymore. Not the case with anything else, like be it JavaScript or PHP, everything breaks.
Yeah, but CSS, it's typed and resilient. What an amazing language. Here, I need to air out some dirty laundry. A lot of people think the CSS carousel features are carousel features. They are not. They are additions to scrollers. So that's why I have it here as Overflow 5 introduced scroll markers and scroll buttons. This is not CSS carousels. Carousels are something you can do with these, but it's not exclusively all that you can do with them. And the idea of these two additions is to make it easier for developers to not screw it up. Like you need buttons, not links, to scroll your scroller. And so to make that easier so that they're always buttons, we have a CSS pseudo selector that will create a button for you and make it so that you can attach it to a scroller. And it'll also handle the amount that scrolls and all that sort of stuff. And then scroll markers are like, hey, you have all these snap points, but they're invisible to users. They don't know what they can snap to or not. But if you show the little dots at the bottom for each of the snap items, you're now increasing the visibility and telling a user that this is a snapping area because they can see the dots or they can see the thumbnails. They can click the thumbnails and jump to an item, right? So the browser handles all this stuff. And these are just, I like to think of them as affordances on a regular scroll area. So you got a regular scroll area that has a little bar at the bottom that you can grab and, get the thumb, go back and forth, or you can add some buttons to the scroll area. Now they can click the buttons and that nudges the scroller back and forth. Or you can add these scroll markers. And again, just these are affordances. We didn't interrupt the way that the thing scrolled at all. It's still just overflow auto, but we've added these nice things for users to have additional interaction points that also provide feedback and information to the user about the state of the scroller and what's even available for them inside of it. So that's my little soapbox here, is that they're not CSS carousel features. They're just Overflow 5 new affordances that you can put onto a scroller with CSS. So progressive enhancement, super easy to do. And
there wasn't like a carousel API also, or is that something like, is it something else, or is it just, so did it start off as carousel API and now it's scroll markers and buttons?
There's never been a carousel API. It's just at least for the Chrome team, it was framed as carousel centric because that was one of the main pain points that we were targeting with it. Like we're looking at all these e-commerce stores, Pinterests or whatever. They all have a carousel of images in them or a carousel of products. And in every design system that we spoke with, the carousel ended up being way harder than they thought it was going to be. Right, just like one of the things you said in the beginning, you got like a responsive one, right? Hey, on a big screen, I want to scroll by 3 items at a time, but on a mobile, I want to scroll by 1 at a time. That alone is a lot of work for someone to write in JavaScript, let alone all the buttons, the statefulness of the dots and the thumbnails. Just the whole thing it was a lot. It was always more complicated than people thought, which meant that they were not doing a lot of things. Like a lot of carousels don't have mobile touch support. You can't swipe them because they're not scrollers. They don't think of them as scrollers. So the engineer that built it to save themselves on trouble, they slide everything around, which meant a touch user can't just swipe it. Or if they do swipe it, they get the worst version, which is like, I call it an uncanny swipe, where, I mean, back in the day with jQuery, you would swipe on an image and then after your swipe was done, then the image moved over. It wasn't even attached to your finger. And then these days you might have someone that does something a little bit like that, where like it follows your finger with JavaScript, translating X. And then when you let go, it animates to the new position. And to you as a user, you're like, that's not the same as scroll snap. This didn't feel like my operating system. This felt like somebody animated the thing to the new position. And so you get this like uncanny experience. Like I'm not interacting with a scroller. I can feel it. So anyway, it's like all these, and you had all these accessibility issues. People, so not only just like no touch support, but there's all sorts of littered with issues. And so these things kind of got rid of all that, where you could just put markers or put buttons on there. They would be as accessible as the browser could do, and they're going to get more accessible over time. And you could liberate your carousel component from having piles of JavaScript. There was a Google one that had 7 scripts that loaded just to manage the carousel. And we got to delete all of the scripts and just put in a chunk of CSS. And so their page load performance went up. Their scroll experience was better for mobile. Users with JavaScript disabled got a carousel. Screen reader users were really happy because the things actually said what they were and said that they were in a list of this many items. And it was just much more descriptive about what was going on. So it's just like all these wins across the board. And to me, these again are still just scroll enhancements. It's not a carousel. It's just ways to make a scroller better for everybody. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for a carousel, there's still things that are not solved yet. Like, for example, like the endless scroll possibility. Yep. Yeah, so that's a really hard thing to crack. I don't know if that ever happens. But yeah,
it's on the task list. So is infinite. So you have lazy scrolling, or like what is the difference? Hold on. You have infinite scroll and you have cyclical scroll. Okay, so what you described was cyclical scroll, which is as I get to the last item, as I keep scrolling, it goes back to the beginning automatically. Browser engineers have an idea of how to do cyclical scroll. Infinite scroll, though, we currently have contain intrinsic size and content visibility auto. And these will delay rendering of the items until they approach the viewport and then paint them. So you can save on rendering. But it's not the same thing as an infinite list where users expect to load more data by the time they reach a bottom. I scrolled to the bottom. Now I need to get 100 more. Oh, now I'm going to get 100 more. And that's different than the virtualized scrolling that you can get with contain intrinsic size. Anyway, these are all things that were on my list of pain points and things that we needed to make better. And cyclical scrolling is probably going to get done before infinite. But we do need an infinite list view on the web. We need something that is competitive with a UI table view that they have on native. And, React, the whole reason React got invented like 12 years ago or whatever was for an infinite list. So if we can get rid of that need, we could get rid of a lot of the requirements that folks are reaching for these tools just to do that one little thing.
Yes, I agree. I remember there wasn't there also some kind of web component or like built-in web component thing that was supposed to implement an infinite list in Chrome? But I think it was basically just...
there was a Lappy at one point. Yeah, the layered API. They had a couple of them. They had Toast, and was it an infinite list one?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a similar thing to Toast. So it was also that at that same time, I think that the Chrome engineers...
Yeah, that was the layered APIs at Chrome Dev Summit. LAPIs, Lappies, and they got pushed back hard from the community. and crushed a lot of those developers. A lot of the developers quit after that. They were like, geez, all we wanted to do is help you, and you all got so mad at us. And they were like, fine, bye. And they left. They just left.
Well, I can totally imagine. Yeah. Happens.
Yep. It's tough stuff.
I wanted to see the scroll marker in action, and I went to the MDN web docs, and maybe I ask you to also go to this page and try it out. The one thing I'm confused with is there is this example with the red buttons below the item list, which you can click. And when I click it, it also scrolls down the page. And I think it scrolls down too much because there is this sticky stuck header on top, which is then overlying. Is it on purpose that it also scrolls down instead of only
this is
left
the
and
bug
right?
we were talking about earlier where scroll into view is toggling too many scrollers. Mm-hmm. I wonder if they've written JavaScript and that those aren't CSS markers. Let me see. Here, it's a scroll marker, but maybe they have JavaScript clicking on it. Yeah, it shouldn't scroll the page like that. That's not good. If you want to see good examples, here I just sent a link on our thing there. It's chrome.dev/carousel. And I built about 20. So you're talking about business use cases. I use Overflow 5, so scroll buttons and scroll markers, and scroll-driven animations, and a few of these things, and I layer them in to all of these business use cases, where you have either a media player, you have weather widgets, you have testimonials, you have a product slider with product images, you have an app switcher, you have a TV series where you're scrolling through TV series like your series 1, series 2, the seasons, hubs, pages, a gallery, a wizard, which is like a form-based wizard, which uses the scroll Overflow 5 features. And then you have like the vertical wheel, which to me looks like a retro video game system. And so, my goal of this was to take these primitives, like we were talking about earlier, like, hey, what am I supposed to do with buttons and markers? And it's like, well, it's CSS, yo, you could do whatever you want. So here it is, like a whole bunch of meaningful use cases using these features. And for things way more than carousels, although you could argue they're all carousels, but maybe they're not. I don't know. You decide.
No, they feel better. I while you were talking, I played around with the horizontal cards all of the time because they have this nice effect of showing additional information when they are in focus.
Yeah, scroll state query. That's when it snapped. When it snapped, you
but it's so
present
smooth.
the caption.
It's also so smooth.
Yep, no JavaScript in there. Pretty amazing, huh?
Mm.
So yeah, that's scroll state.
One more use case for the scroll markers is also this thing where you have like a table of contents, and when you scroll on the page, and if it's like position fixed, for example, and you scroll in the page, then you could, for example, highlight the section, like the link that points to the section that you're currently in.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, that's the vertical scroll spy. And that's because a marker is not a dot for a carousel. A scroll marker is a way for you to select an element in a scroll area, and I call it making it a point of interest and surfacing that point of interest into the scroll marker list. And so, you've got an article, you wrote an article, all your headers, you usually can scroll to them, right? You put a little hashtag tag there. You can also make them a scroll marker. So your table of contents is now generated from CSS based on the selectors and content that you specify. So you could highlight all the headers and be like, hey, add those to my scroll marker list. And now the browser manages highlighting them, clicking them, and scrolling them down to that header. Everything. You don't have to do any of it. And it's because you said these are points of interest. I want to surface and make them easier for my users to find into this one little group called a marker group. It's pretty cool. If you go to the TV series demo too, in the horizontal TV series, the season 1 and season 2 are generated markers off of a group of content. So you don't have to make a point of interest. A marker doesn't have to be one item. It can represent a group. And so in this case, season 1 and season 2 are generated dynamically based off the content. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, really cool stuff to play with and to like refactor the code. Then you list scroll bar color.
Yeah. That was because
Why did you do that?
At my talk at CSS Day, one of the opening things was I was like, here's the problem: is most people just do overflow auto, and they're done. To them, it scrolls. It's done. I'm all done. And I'm like, no, you're not done. You just did one. And I also talk about how overflow auto is a really wildly powerful CSS property value pair. Because think about all the stuff. You get a stateful bar that gets added to your scroll area with a stateful thumb that then you can grab back and forth. The size of the thumb grows and shrinks based on how much the scroll area is. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, overflow auto is very similar to a video tag where you get all these controls for free. They just pop up. The browser just generates controls. And it's like, I don't think, so it's like step one, audience, was I don't think you thought very hard about how much magic you get for overflow auto. And then I'm like, but you can also do better. So let's make this really great feature, because it has all these features when you do overflow auto, just so many features, like your keyboard, your up and down arrows work, the page up, down buttons work. You can hit the home button, scroll to the bottom. You can hit the whatever, there's like, or page end. There's all these different ways to interact with a scroller. And so then scroll bar colors, I'm like, here's the first thing that you need to do to avoid looking like, and then I show a bunch of websites that have a scroll area and they don't have scroll bar color on their site. And I'm browsing as a user with scroll bars set to inline, not overlay. Most developers are on a Mac, and on Mac, the default is overlay scroll bars, which means you don't see hideous scroll bars very often. If you are on a Windows machine,
I think that's a big problem.
See, thank you, dude. That was my thing. I was like, here's a big problem. I guarantee 90% of the people in this crowd, even though you're all CSS professionals, don't have this property on your site, and it's making your site look bad. If you have a scroll area, this is hideous. And so I walk them through bad cases and how one CSS property, which is scroll bar color, can make it look integrated and beautiful and nice on your site. And then I go even further into it. I'm like, here, we can add hover effects if the user can hover. So that way it's kind of faint until you hover in the scroll area. Now the scroll bar highlights and becomes higher contrast, letting the user know that this scroll bar is represented in this scroll area. If the keyboard focuses inside of there, highlight the scroll bar thumb a blue color. Make it look like if they use their arrow keys, it's going to control the scroller, because that's what happens when you focus into a scroller. Most people don't build in these visual affordances to hint to a user about the behavior and functionality. Users tend to just explore. They're like, oh, I'll smash my keyboard keys and see if it scrolls the area. So yeah, we do scroll bar color. We talk about scroll bar, and then I go build really beautiful scroll examples where I'm like, here's all the layers. And then I did it with cascade layers too. It was kind of fun. So it's like you unveil a cascade layer and it adds a new feature to the scroller. And so the talk was me unveiling cascade layers, adding features to scrollers that worked across all the browsers. And the whole goal was making smooth, beautiful scroll experiences. And so I put scroll bar color on here because, I wanted to talk about inline scroll bars and how I actually think they're better and how to style them so they don't make your site look hideous.
Yeah, we will link to your slides, but I think it's not the real deal, so we have to watch your talk, and it's not yet published.
They might not be either.
I think it won't be published until this will be published, but so once it is, we'll just edit this episode's show notes and put it in. So or have an eye out for like the CSS Day videos.
Yep, they might not get released this year, so I might end up doing my talk.
Okay.
Just for free on YouTube or something like that, and just post it. We'll see.
Okay. I get it. Yeah, I just wanted to add, so I think every Mac user should plug in a mouse or pointing device into the laptop, and then I think like scroll bars appear, right?
Nice.
So it's just when you're like just working with your touch pad, that you get these overlaid scroll bars that appear and disappear depending on where your mouse is, where your pointer.
Yep, I had a slide in there that shows the before and after, so that you could see like what the scroll bars look like if you haven't written this style, and then you slide over on the image comparison widget or whatever, and then you see that they're all nice. And you'll find that in the slides, everybody. It's slide 4.
Okay. Is the scroll bar also attached to accent color, or rather
it's not? And part of my advice too was generally don't change much about the root scroller. So the main document scroller, but your nested scrollers you can customize those a little bit more. But still, the root scroller, you at least need to say scroll bar color, and you could just say canvas text space transparent. You need to make that track transparent, and then you need the thumb color to be some sort of dynamic adaptive color from your system. So you could use a system color like canvas text, or you could use, var my text color 1 or whatever. That way it matches your site and has a transparent track. And that'll really modernize the way that your inline scroll bars look on your website. So it's like a huge tip right there.
Okay. Well, looking forward to your talk. Just ping us when you have something online, and then we'll link it in the show notes.
Will do.
And watch it, of course.
I did blog about it, at least the Nintendo Switch home screen recreation. So that's in the show notes here. It's nerdy.dev/Nintendo Switch home screen CSS recreation. And I walk you through the whole process of taking a regular overflow hidden or overflow auto scroller of video games and then layering in piece by piece really meaningful additions that help it look elegant, integrated, and feel good for users.
All right, cool. So then you have sibling index and sibling count. Those are also, I think, very eagerly awaited by the programmers, I guess.
Yeah, they have a lot. This solves just the classic problem of, I want to know if this is the third item so that I can, stagger its animation, or I can change its background color to be this shade of a hue. And it all comes down to just getting the right words for the name of the function. And it turns out we're going to use sibling index and sibling count. So you can know how many siblings you have. Like, I'm one of 12. And then you can be like, what's my position? You're like, oh, but I'm position 3 of 12. And you can use that information to do whatever you want. And there's all sorts of cool demos and examples. And it'll get this work out of our template syntax, which is usually where people put it, is they'll, whether it's in JSX or if they're in PHP or wherever their template syntax is, and they have an each for each, and they'll put the index on the element. But that also doesn't work if you shuffle it and stuff like that. So anyway, this will be a really cool function. And you're just talking about what's new in CSS and cool stuff. Sibling count is in Chrome. Canary, I think it's set to ship soon. And there's very positive signals across the board from developers to implementers that that's just a cool one, sibling index.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the missing puzzle pieces to really replace SCSS and these kinds of things. Like, for example, if you have 10 elements and you want them to be animated into the screen, but you want the delay to increase with every element so that you have them animating one after the other. That's something that you could do with sibling count instead of doing a for each and then nth child selector thing in SCSS, for example.
Yep.
As are the next functions. Or next features.
Ooh, some big game changers here. We got at function and at mixin, and a mixin could use a function, but a function can't use a mixin. And then we have if statements here. And so this is just really digging more into some of those Sass features, digging more into the fact that this is a robust language that's looking to really expand itself into being more dry. So repeating yourself even less, creating healthy utilities. And so I like to think of at function as returning a value. So if you've got a property value like overflow : auto, property : value, at function fits on the right-hand side of the colon. It can't go anywhere else. Whereas at mixin can replace all sorts of property value combinations. And it works just like at apply. So at mixin defines it. It can take some parameters, and at apply applies it. And at function can take parameters and return a value. And these two things are going to be wild. And their functions and mixins are prototyped in Chrome Canary. You can go try them right now. And those specs are in early phases, and you can have your voice heard and help impact them. And anyway, these are just really cool to hear. If mixin and functions coming to CSS is pretty sweet.
Yep, absolutely. I think so. What I use function a lot for is to translate pixel values into RAM values. I think that should then also be possible with add function, right?
It will.
Because I just don't want to calculate, and I also don't want to mess with the root font size. So yeah, that's super cool. And Mixin is like fantastic to organize code and also maybe to minimize the size of your CSS. If you have like repeating patterns everywhere, then you can just import these Mixin blocks.
Totally.
Cool. And if else, of course, is also fantastic.
Yeah, it'll kind of get rid of our hacks that we're doing now with, clamp, or what do we do right now? We take calc and we multiply it by a really high number. And then we see if it's over a threshold or under.
There's a few dirty tricks.
A few dirty tricks, yeah.
We can also link like a very short video from Una, where she shows off if and also something else that I've forgotten, but that was nice.
Yep, awesome.
Yeah, took a note. Yeah, I think we're almost through. We talked about CSS Day a lot already. Yeah, you also did like a few other things, like Mixin. I apparently like a few view transition things.
Well, the whole talk, all the slides are view transitions, GSAP split text, and starting style. And wow, and my view transitions are 3D view transitions, which I don't think a lot of people have seen. And so the browser just...
So you rebuilt Reveal.js.
I did, yeah. Or even Keynote, because it's all auto animate. I don't like all those animations that you see as you go through there. I don't tell those what to do. All I did is I have like a little framework that automatically gives view transition names to children and tries to find and create unique ones. And then the browser just finds the pages and says, oh, here's the title from this page and the title from the next page. I'll just morph them. And I'm like, cool, during that morph, I want you to do a 3D flip. And it's like, all right. So the browser and I just had a blast making those slides. They're very modern feeling, very animated and interactive. And it's all just web pages. They're each web pages I build in Astro. It's pretty cool.
Wow. So it's not just what's inside the slides, it's also the slides themselves that are worth having a look at. Cool. And then the final two things that we have here is custom select, which a few people might already know. It's basically just the beginning of a lot of more form input elements that are going to end up being stylable one day.
Yep, you got it. And it's just like in terms of new CSS, it's just really fun still to know that a select can be customized. And there's not a whole lot of exploration that's been done here yet. So if you're a handcrafting UI developer, you can go make some really cool stuff with these. You got to check out Brecht. He's done a lot of really fun things with custom selects. I've done mostly custom selects that are very business oriented. They're not as fun or whimsical. But yeah, gotta go check those things out. In terms of new CSS, it's just really cool that we're finally going to be able to customize input elements a lot. That's be great.
Yeah. Like I think the elephant in the room there is still the multi-select.
Yep.
But it's like, this is such a train wreck on every platform, in every incarnation that I've seen. So it's, I'm not surprised that people focus on the non-multi version.
Yep, I agree. It's got a lot of warts and a lot of old features they're going to have to patch to get that worked up. But I'm looking forward to it, and it's fun to see Apple right now really looking into these customized inputs and putting a lot of effort and thought process into how to empower us to make these beautiful. Yep, it's nice.
And the last thing we have here is CSS 4 and 5. We did talk about it in, I don't know when, with Quentin.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Probably a year ago, I would guess.
It was November 2024. 640, I think. Yes, 640.
Not that long ago.
Nice.
Yeah. So, we have a new logo that you designed or co-designed, but I think you really did most of the work.
Yeah.
And it's really nice.
Thank you. I'm just really happy to see that logo has done so good. And it was very much a community effort, but I was there shepherding it and, kind of helping create submissions, create a platform for people to collaborate in, creating some guidelines and rules to help us make sure we create something that's accessible and desirable all at the same time. And yeah, it took a while, and I really like what we landed at, but I put CSS 4.5 on here just because it was fun at the beginning. It was like, oh, it was last time we talked, it was pretty much CSS 4. Now we're in CSS 5. Hey, CSS 6. We even talked about some CSS 6 items today. And I think those are still really nice. So that group is still together. But since I've left Google, my activity has dropped, but I intend to get back into it. And we have pretty much everything labeled right now. So every CSS property that's ever come out is in a bucket of CSS 4, 5, or 6. With a reason. And we even have this website you can go to kind of explore and look at features and, be like, well, hey, what's in CSS 5? Because we feel like that's one of the most valuable things that people are going to do. It's just like, I'm feeling behind on CSS. What's new? And then they can be like, oh, snap, there's CSS 4. I remember CSS 3. What's in 4? And they're like, what, 4? There's a 5? And so each of these little moments can create meaningful learning opportunities for people who just kind of want to see the breadth of what's come out, and they don't want to look at a huge list, and they want to see things that sort of like have rolled out together or things that rolled out as part of an era. And so that's I just wanted to bring that back up, that it's still there. We still intend on finishing it, and I still think it's got some high value impact. But just in case anyone was curious, they're like, Adam, what's happening with CSS 4, 5, and 6 or whatever? And I'm like, it's still there. The community group is still talking about it. And we're just kind of in the, like, how like the 80-20 rule, where 80% of it was easy to do and 20% of it is hard. We're definitely in that 20% finishing style phase, and we'll get there. So just wanted to let everyone know.
Yeah, but people are already talking about it, getting the word out. So I've found plenty of blog posts or talks where people were talking about CSS 4 and 5. Of course, it's like not the broad mass of talks, but it's mostly people that are like really deep into CSS. But it's nice to see these terms being coined and appear everywhere now.
Yep, awesome,
wonderful. So that was a mouthful. A lot of things I think to read up on. We have our document here with plenty of links and notes for links to add, and we'll put them all in the show notes. Everybody can look it up. And to you, thanks a lot for your time, for being here, for enlightening us, but not us alone, but everyone, and doing these nice experiments and talking about it.
You are welcome.
And if there are questions to you, people will find your contact data also in our show notes if they don't have it already. And with that, we wish everyone a nice day, evening, or a night, and listen to you next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.